Well, thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for reaching out and being down. It's always cool to one have people find the podcast after all this time. I feel like it's been out there for a while, so I feel like it's sometimes run its course. But to have people find it kind of now, but then also find stuff that's like kind of unique that people are doing. Like
Hmm.
not a lot of people are doing the sound you guys are doing, so I'm really stoked on it. So it's gonna be a
Well,
good
cool.
time.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, hell yeah. All right, so what I'll do is I'll basically count us down. I'll crack my beer. I'll do the little intro, bring you in, and we'll just have a good time.
Perfect. Sounds great.
Oh yeah, sweet. All right, in three, two, one. Welcome to the Beers with Bands podcast with your host Michael Torres. What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Beers with Bands. Very stoked tonight to be sitting down with Daniel from the Great Wide Nothing. How are you doing?
I'm all right. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. This is we'll see how this one goes. This is the first episode I've recorded in I think about a month. So I got to get like the jitters
Yeah.
gone again as I get back into the swing of things. But it's been a good day. Just did some editing, watched a lot of Smallville. I've been on a Smallville kick lately. It's been great.
I've never watched Smallville. It seems like something I'd be into, but I've just never gotten around to it.
And I was the same way. I was like, I'm more of a Marvel than DC guy personally,
Hmm.
but like, I was like, this show was like a classic in its time. I should just give it a chance. And then, yeah, I've been hooked for like the last month. Just middle of season 5 right now, and got like 4.5 more seasons to go. Like, I didn't realize they did 10 seasons of it, which is wild. But yeah, it's been great to kind of jump down that and kind of experience it all for the first time.
Right on. I did that with Twin Peaks not too long ago.
Ooh,
I still need to watch The Return. I don't have a movie subscription, which that's the only place you can find it at the moment outside of, getting the DVDs.
yep.
Um, but I still need to watch that. But what I did watch, I watched the first two seasons and then Fire Walk with Me, which you don't come out of that movie the same person that you were when you go into it. But yeah, I love Twin Peaks, and that was my recent rabbit hole.
Yeah, that's I think one that I need to go and revisit because like I watched it probably at this point maybe 10 years ago. Obviously, I'm in a
Hmm.
different place in my life mentally and physically, I guess. But like I feel like it's one that I need to like go rewatch and like maybe understand it a little bit more as to what I
Yeah.
experienced.
Well, and I think that anything that Lynch has had his hands on is kind of like that. You can come back to it at different points in your life and it speaks to you in different ways.
Oh yeah,
Um, yeah. Like Eraserhead, I must have watched that like 15 times by now, and every time I have a different interpretation, so to speak, of it. There's always some kind of new label of Jungian bullshit to extrapolate from it.
yeah. Well, I feel like there's a good segue here of interpreting things, especially with the style of music that you guys are doing. For people that aren't aware of the Great Wide Nothing, I know we kind of forgot to mention earlier. Tangents are totally fine. I'm always down to see
Hmm.
where those go, and I think this is gonna be
Yeah.
a good conversation aside from everything else. But Great Wide Nothing, you guys are a prog punk band from Atlanta.
Yeah.
Which for most people I think probably that are in the same boat as me, we're more used to thinking of prog as prog metal and just the crazy licks that people are doing on guitar with that. Just so to see prog punk come across the screen was a nice little touch, and just the things that you guys are doing are super sick in there throughout the discography. So before we get too far into it, as I've said, your name is Daniel. What do you do in the Great White Nothing?
So I'm our bass player, singer, occasional guitarist because we don't have a guitarist. Usually it's bass, keys, and drums. And then I also do a lot of the songwriting. I write all of our lyrics, um, manage our social media, kind of in conjunction with a friend of ours named Katie. Do all the booking, all the emails. I wear a lot of hats.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
And then I know we're missing like one or two people depending on how you look at things online. I think in some pictures there's you and a keyboardist, and then sometimes a keyboardist and a drummer. Like who are we missing, and like what do they do?
So Dylan Porper is our keyboard player, and he's kind of my creative partner for a lot of the music, which isn't at all to diminish what our drummer Jeff does, because you know, he's always kind of the unsung hero that comes in and is like, "Hey, let's just cut this shit out and then add this right here." So Dylan and I will toss around ideas, kind of create the overall form of the music. And then Jeff is usually in the room when we kind of finalize the arrangement and helps
Okay.
to kind of, talk us off the ledge from things that probably shouldn't be done. Or encourage our bad habits of incorporating bullshit time signatures. Because
Uh,
he's a Dream Theater fan. He's a big Mike Portnoy guy.
okay.
So every once in a while, he'll come up with something just completely convoluted for the sake of being convoluted. And it's one of the reasons why I love having him in the band.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense because I feel like if people look at the discography, yes, you guys are technically depending on amount of songs, you can look at a release versus song wise versus like time wise. Song wise, these are like barely EPs going into full lengths, but lengthwise, these things are all like full length albums
Yeah.
of just craziness. Because
Yeah.
I think I was looking through everything, and I on it's on hymns for the Hungry Spirits Volume 2. You close off with To Find the Light Part 2 at 19 minutes and 58 seconds. That's just the final song of
Yeah.
a five
Yeah.
song EP, which is wild. But I love it just getting into those points of like a song, especially like listening through like the latest album, and just like having you guys just go off the rails of just jamming and just having a good time. Like I get how that would be one difficult to come in as the drummer and be like, okay, we're doing what now? Like we have to figure this out from here, but also being like, honestly, it's pretty sick. Like how do we add to it but not like overdo it? And you guys are
Yeah.
like killing it in that aspect.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's definitely, you kind of always want to check your ambitions with what makes sense to do. You don't want to do things just to do it, right?
Hmm.
Um, which is one reason why we don't do a whole lot of those, big like 17-minute, 20-minute songs. Because I mean, God knows that all three of us coming from a mutual love of like 70s prog, we could all do that. We could very easily go that route, but none of that really makes sense to do, especially in a live performance setting. Because, I mean, we're part of the punk aspect of what we do is that we've come up in a scene that's dominated by punk and indie and emo bands. You're not going to go to a house show and sit there while somebody plays a 20-minute fucking song. Um, so, we try to keep it manageable, and and temper our experimental and long form ambitions with kind of a sense of what we can realistically accomplish and do well.
Speaking of like the scene there, obviously, Atlanta, Georgia, one thing I always think of, especially with Atlanta, and most probably people think about it this way, is, the like kind of like the rap and hip hop community. So to hear
Yeah.
kind of like this more like punk community and indie community, like how is it and how is it like? Do you feel like it's been growing over the past few years?
Oh yeah. I mean, and it's so there definitely is a thriving, very strong hip hop and rap scene. I mean, it's one of the capitals, to my knowledge, of that industry.
Yeah.
Um, but in terms of like outside of that, the dominant strains of music would definitely be more of, the emo and the post-hardcore and that kind of stuff. Um, so there is a very thriving, very vibrant, and very diverse music scene full of underground rock artists in Atlanta and around Atlanta. Especially around Atlanta, because you can say you're from Atlanta, and that encompasses a very wide range. Um, you talk about a place like Buford, Georgia, that's like probably 45 minutes outside Atlanta proper, or even where I'm living in Gainesville, and you're still Atlanta, more or less,
Hmm.
because that's where everything is happening. It's where everybody kind of converges. Um, but yeah, I've watched that scene survive COVID and keep kicking. And there have been lulls here and there from my perspective, and I'm not the dominant voice in that whole scene, but I've watched it and I've been part of it for a long time. So it might surprise people to know that it's not all hip hop and rap down here. There's actually a very strong undercurrent of underground indie kind of music.
Hell yeah, yeah. I think I've talked to. I think the one band that I'm thinking of, and I want to say that they were a Georgia band. And it's been a few years since I've talked to them. Was the Caroline? I think they're from around there.
Yep, they're Atlanta.
But yeah, so I know that there's like a pretty good scene there, but I also love the whole while you can be Atlanta, you're not also Atlanta because like we
Yeah,
get that up here in the Twin Cities. Like I live in Minneapolis proper, but like there's a big if you live in one of the direct suburbs or you say you're Minneapolis and someone questions you on like what street you live on and you give the wrong one, they're like, man, you're not actually proper.
fucking
Like
poser.
yeah, exactly. But it's also funny, like growing up in Iowa, like all the kids from like Illinois would come to the University of Iowa and go to school there, and would be like, "Oh, where are you from?" They're like, everyone would say Chicago, whether you were Chicago proper or you lived like an hour to 2 hours outside the city. They just thought it was easier to say Chicago
Yeah,
for everything, and it's like,
that's a
no,
big part of it too.
yeah. Like I get it. At the same time, it's like, no, put some respect on like where you're from. If you're like, whatever burb, just make that a staple. To an extent, I know it's sometimes
Yeah,
hard because, like, especially growing up in a small town in Iowa, being like, "Oh, we're a West Liberty pop punk band," and they're like, "Where the fuck is that?" And we're like,
yeah,
"So Iowa City." We're just an Iowa City band. We'll just do that instead.
yeah. Eventually, it just becomes simpler.
Yeah,
Better for marketing.
exactly. No, but that's awesome to hear that it's still thriving. Because I think the last time I talked to the Carolyn was a few years before COVID. So it's nice to hear that it's the scene is still kind of bounced back or and thriving. Because I've also been in those moments too, kind of like how you mentioned, where you feel like there's some lulls, but it's also it really depends on like how close you are to the actual scene. Like there was times where I took a step away from my local scene, so like in my mind I knew I had some friends still doing stuff, but I didn't really hear too much. So like in my mind, I'm like, oh, the scene's also like on a lull, but it's really like if you find it, it's there. It's
Yeah,
still thriving. It's doing its thing, which is really cool to like once you come back out of that bubble and like revisit it, you're like, holy shit, like
yeah.
there's so much stuff still going on.
Yeah, definitely. The only downside is, when you get 30s and above, you come into it and it's like, who are these fucking kids? And why do my knees hurt? Why am I the only one standing at the back here?
Oh yeah, like I had taken a step back and when I came back in, I started doing the podcast, and yeah, I was like 28 or 29, I think, when I started this. Time's a construct. I can't do math right now in my head. But I went to like my first local show that my friends that I had grown up in the scene with were playing. And I was like, who the fuck are all these other people? And why do I feel old as shit right now at 29?
Yeah.
And then like I've gone to a couple local shows here, well, a decent amount of local shows here in the Twin Cities, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know if this is the right crowd that I should like. I feel too old to be in some of these crowds. The music is sick. Everyone that's doing shit right now is amazing. But then there's just moments where I'm like, I feel like everyone's like older cousin that like they're trying to get to like not anyone that would do this, but like I'm like I feel the out of place guy super hard. This just doesn't make sense, and I'm just like, I'll just stay home or do go to a different show where like the older crowd is there. I don't know. It's tough now.
It's a weird kind of liminal space to be in. But,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I think one thing that helps me through it is just like when I do connect with some of those younger bands, like there's one that I recently we had play on our album release show back in May. They're called Japan Trip for Wayward Youth, and they're like it's like noise prog, if that makes
Okay.
any sense. It's like kind of theatrical in one sense and then just unhinged. I don't know how to describe it. There's a lot of jazz influences in it. Like the bass player has this SG bass strung up high that he's doing Jocko riffs on, while the saxophonist is, squeaking, screeching. It sounds like free jazz. But they're like probably 19 something like that. They're in Georgia Tech now. They're Georgia Tech students. And I didn't know anything about them, but I saw some videos and it was like, this is really wild and out there. and I want to, kind of promote this. And ever since then, we've kept in touch with these kids and watched them start exploding. And it's really rewarding to get to watch that.
Hmm.
Because they're starting to, work on their EP and play more shows. They've got some side projects that are also doing shit that's really cool. So I think that's one benefit of being the old guy in the room is getting to kind of watch the cycle repeat itself, and encourage it.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And like that's like one thing that I've kind of loved about doing this too is like I've gotten to sit down with some bands and just watch them kind of explode over a year and like just do all this cool shit. I'm like, damn, like that's amazing to see. Like the dream's still alive for all these kids. And
Yeah.
like as much as like there was people like our generation that would be like, hey, this shit sucked. Touring is is terrible to do sometimes. Like seeing all the things that have opened up to make it like a little bit easier for them to do it has been nice too. Like I think I was talking to someone in our time, if we were to tour, it'd be, hey, you might get a shower today, or if someone lets you stay at their house, you can get a shower. But now, Planet Fitness hack sort of thing where you just buy the membership and you just shower wherever. And like just seeing them just like capitalize on all these moments is really cool to see.
Hmm.
But kind of getting back into the Great White Nothing, you guys have been at least the first EP came out in 2019 for people that are checking everything out now. The View from Olympus, but everything's been just like jumping from there. I feel like because that obviously came out in 2019.
Hmm.
Hymns for Hungry Spirits. Sorry, Volume One came out in 2020.
The pandemic, baby.
Yeah, which we explains the gap, which is, but I mean, to still come out of that, I commend every band that came out of it because there's a lot of bands that we lost and never kind of resurfaced or did anything again.
Yeah, and I've thought about that a good bit lately, honestly, because we just came up on the fifth anniversary of that first Hymns album, and it's kind of, it's made me think about the fact that we are kind of lucky as a band to have managed to create something and release it during that time, and then come out of the other side on it, on the other side of it.
Because looking back at that time, I know a lot of bands were like, okay, depending on where it was in 2020, they kind of decided, let's hold on to it, wait for like the light at the end of the tunnel kind of deal. I didn't check to see exactly when that released in 2020. Like, what was your guys' thoughts on getting it released that same year?
So it was November when we released it, and we actually did manage to do a release show in this controlled environment. We did like a live stream thing,
Okay.
which was fraught with technical difficulties, and I think the video is somewhere still, and we were kind of shaky on it because we hadn't gotten to play live all year, but um, we did manage to get some people in there that were masked and social distanced and whatnot. It was a weird time, but we still got to do that. But I think the thing that really drove us to put that album out, in spite of the fact that it was the worst possible time to put out an album, is that so much of what I was writing for that record felt like it needed to be said then and there. You
Mm.
know, the concluding song on Hymns One is "The Best We Can Do Is Laugh," and that was basically I wrote that kind of given the colossal bullshit that we were collectively dealing with. It was like, the world's basically ending. So what you going to do? You're going to, try to find a sense of humor and try to help people where you can,
Yeah.
which is a sentiment that's kind of popped up a few different times since too. I feel like my songwriting tends to have this kind of dual mind of everything is fucked, but let's have hope anyway.
Which I mean, at the end of the day, like that's all we can kind of do sometimes is kind of just have that hope that like, hey, yeah, we're going through shit right now, but it's gonna get better, right? Like
Yeah.
that's what I think a lot of people are hoping for, and I think it's also like, what a lot of people not just are hoping for. I'm trying to think of another word or segue on this, but like because you're seeing this pop up a little bit in different ways. It's also like a very punk thing to kind of just talk about like the shitty things that are going on right now and just down with the patriarchy type deal. Not to get like super into the aspects of punk, but like that's at the end of the day, that's what we're all relating to and going with
Yeah,
in
but
this scene.
it's that sense of defiance and optimism. It's an optimism based almost in spite and desperation, you
Hmm.
know? But then if it's optimism, there's still kind of a positivity to it. I've gotten a comment from, I got a comment one time from this guy that found us online and he was like, I love that your music is so positive. And I'm like, oh, well, I mean, we're kind of talking about political corruption and immigrants getting treated like shit and all this kind of stuff. But then, he pointed out like, yeah, but there's always like an undercurrent of hope,
Mm.
which I think that's important for me is that I never want to point out a problem that I don't feel like has hope to be solved. I don't want to just bitch and moan and lament life. I think there's always the sense of it can be better, so we're going to fight to make it better.
Yeah. Yeah, which like I said, hope that's what we're all hoping for is just a silver lining or light at the end of the tunnel. I know things are getting real fucked up in this country right now,
Yeah, yeah,
especially living in the Twin Cities and having all these ice raids going on is it's fucked.
yeah,
It's a tough time. Um, and I had a thought there, and I lost. But yeah, it's a shitty time, and like we can all only hope for something better to come, and do what we can in the meantime to kind of have keep our I don't know spirits up is the probably the right term
yeah,
in there. So like as probably bouncing off what like that person said, like as much as like there's like this underlying hope and like happiness to the songs that you might find it hard to go with. That's just what we kind of have to find in a lot of
yeah,
things. It's just that one spot.
yeah,
But I mean that was also a great EP, and then you followed up a few years later, with Hymns for the Hungry Spirits Volume 2, which again phenomenal. I did love the whole like I don't know, full circle tie-in is probably the best
yeah,
way to do it. Of starting with "To Find the Light" and then ending with kind of "To Find the Light,"
yeah.
doing a little part one, part two. Was that always the idea to kind of do a volume one, volume two with that set of songs?
There was. I mean, it was always going to be, either a double album or a double album released as a part one, part two, kind of like the Afterman, Coheed and Cambria.
Hmm.
Um, which Coheed's one of my favorite bands. So a lot of the conceptual stuff, definitely comes to the forefront with that. But all of those songs came from a similar emotional and kind of contemplative part of my life where it was very much about losing things and feeling longing and dealing with existential crisis, basically, and trying to figure out how to navigate that. And so there was always kind of an idea of those songs linking together in some form. Musically, the callback to the intro of there is a callback to the intro of To Find the Light Part One at the very end of To Find the Light Part Two.
Hmm.
And that was Dylan's doing because he kind of worked out and discovered, hey, the key is the same. So we're just going to tack this on to the end and it's full circle. One of these days, I think we're going to try and release it as like a complete package where people can listen all the way through. That is yet to materialize, but one of these days.
No, I love those little aspects when you can kind of just take something and like just set it on repeat. I can't remember who I was talking to recently. For some reason, Scarlet Street pops into my mind, but I don't remember if it was their album or not. And I'm gonna guess it was wrong. But someone recently that I was talking to, they also kind of did the same thing where like their outro perfectly looped into the intro. So
Hmm.
especially as someone that's doing this, and I try and listen to like the album a lot, listening like leading up to the interview, like I'll just hit repeat and just have my it automatically do it. So it really was trippy just having it flow perfectly, kind of right back around as I
Yeah,
dove back in everything and doing those little things uh, unintentionally, or actually intentionally on your part, on your guys' part, but like doing those little things are really cool, especially since it is a giant callback onto itself and it's supposed to be like this giant release in its own capacity. So I mean, those little things I really love. How much of I know we're still we haven't even gotten to like the latest release, but now I get so curious about everything else.
Yeah.
Um, how much of like Volume 2 was written around the same time as Volume 1, or was there like a pretty good break in between?
So the writing for volume two started as we had finished volume one.
Hmm.
So, I mean, it was all still tapping into some of the same, the same, I guess, ethos, you might say. A lot, it was tapping into a lot of the same emotions, a lot of the same conceptual guide points. Um, and it's a very loose concept. It's loss, longing, and the process of finding hope. Um, but that writing started right after we were in the finishing stages of volume one and continued for probably about 2 years as we started trying to really iron out, how are we going to end this and, stick the landing? Which, of course, we ended up doing the most convoluted, ridiculous piece of music we could possibly do. um, and that was a fun thing to write and a bitch to record. I ended up compiling all these little scraps of ideas that I'd stored away as demos for probably like the last 7 or 8 years. Even some stuff that was from a band before this band, which this band's been going for about a decade. So you can imagine how long it was sitting on my laptop.
Wow.
But it was kind of like, let's just do it. Let's throw it all, throw it all in kitchen sink. Um, But because of all of that, because it was kind of a long gestating thing, that's why there was that break between the volume one and volume two.
Now, like I mentioned, on Volume 2, there we do have this 19-minute song. How does one go about recording that in a session? Do you guys just kind of break it up of like, hey, we're gonna do like 4 minutes here, pick up another 4 minutes here type deal?
Well, one good thing about the multi-part suites like that, and if you go back and watch some of the documentaries on like how Rush made hemispheres and shit like that, you can kind of take it piece by piece because even though it's a broad, long form piece of music, there are starting points and stopping points kind of within. There's movements.
Hmm.
And so um with our drummer, we had to kind of get him to do the whole thing straight through because he was on a time crunch at the time. I can't remember why or what the circumstances were, but God bless him. He learned the whole goddamn thing and came in and just that's all we did that day was just track that one damn song. Um, and he tracked it to the demos that Dylan and I had kind of compiled together. That's how we used to work. We've kind of changed our approach now, but at the time, we would have him kind of track the demos that we had written, and then we'd flesh out our parts later. But, for the most part, though, when it comes to like fleshing it out, we kind of just started and stopped at the parts where it made sense to start and stop. Um, you've got that opening movement that kind of, to me, the opening movement ends when the guitar comes in and the vocals, begin. And then that section ends when you get to like the Doctor Who sounding synth thing, the da 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 da, um, which I was watching a lot of Doctor Who at the time, so I came by that honestly. But but that part goes on till what we refer to as the Xanadu riff, which, if you listen to Rush, the song Xanadu has this kind of very scalar riff, the da 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 da
Mm.
da 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 da. And we kind of ripped that off coming out of that big instrumental section, going into the final vocal bit. Um, so we would just kind of take those chunks and approach them as a song almost in and of themselves, and then move on to the next bit and then the next bit. And by the end of it, you construct something that's cohesive.
And I can't imagine. It is the nice thing in there having like all those different sequences and like kind of mini songs on their own. But I can't imagine your drummer having to come in and just having to power through. Like that's very commendable to do
Yeah.
that whole thing.
Yeah.
Like that's insane. That's amazing.
Yeah. He's a beast, I tell you. I mean, he'll learn shit that nobody has any business learning, in a given period of time and be able to produce it flawlessly.
That's
So it's
wild.
Yeah, and he and I go way back. The band that I had before this band and his old band played together a few times, and I filled in on bass for them at one point. So we had a working relationship prior to the start of Great Wide. Um, and so that's just kind of continued naturally onward. When the time came for me to be like, hey, I'm starting this band, I need a drummer. There's my first choice. Um,
Would I can ask this one later? I'll just go for it now. Like, was the idea always to kind of have this kind of proggy? I feel like in some aspects a little bit of a jam band style sound at some points. Like, was this always the original like intention for the sound of Great White Nothing?
yeah, I mean, our first album I wrote pretty much solo. And it was very much my homage to a lot of the 80s neo prog, especially. I was very into Marillion, IQ, bands like that that most people have never heard of and probably have no reason to hear of. But, on top of that, like Steven Wilson, Porcupine Tree stuff, Pink Floyd, Rush, early Genesis, the 70s shit. A lot of that was kind of the driving force for me musically up until I finally got more immersed in the scene proper. So we began more as a pure prog band, essentially. But over time, just being immersed in the environment of this DIY ethos and being exposed to the type of music, the more like the MCR and Mars Volta, Coheed and Cambria, and then me kind of going down a punk rabbit hole several years ago, discovering the Replacements, discovering the Clash, which, sounds ridiculous probably to people who have been in that in their whole musical life. But for me, it was revelatory, because it gives you permission to kind of fuck things up
Mm-hmm.
and take chances that you might not otherwise feel like you should take. And kind of embracing that and embracing more of the social and political commentary aspects, that's kind of been the synthesis that has wound up in who we are as a band now. So, yeah, I mean, I guess to answer your question and be very long winded with it, because I am very long winded, we started out more a prog band. So the idea was always there to have that aspect. And then we kind of became more of a prog punk band over time. So we did the opposite of mellowing out.
No, that's totally. It's always interesting for me seeing like where bands kind of start out and like the sound that they're kind of going for, and then seeing how like the project matures and how they mature themselves and where they end up. Like one of my best friends, they're like the band that I used to TM for. They started out like kind of like this fast pop punk band, and then by the time that band was starting to die out, they had just gotten into like the almost the fifth wave twinkly style emo
Nice.
that we know and love today. But they just got there, I think, at the wrong time where it wasn't the popular thing yet, and then they died out. And sometimes I think back and I'm like, man, if you guys would have just waited just a little bit longer, I think it would have worked. But like, it's always cool to see where things end up. Like, obviously, Ben Quad, one of the killers right now in the DIY scene, seeing them kind of do go from Midwest emo to kind of like this post punk to now like a post emo in there. It's just like really sick in general.
One of the bands that really excites me is Combat.
Mm,
Like I listened to Stay Golden so many fucking times when it came out. And it's just like the theatrical bits that they added in and just kind of the bombastic arrangements. They're I wouldn't call it prog necessarily, but there's very much an ambitious kind of off the wall sort of approach to the way that they do things that excites me a lot. So I love seeing that start to get popularized in DIY, people taking more of those risks creatively.
yeah, yeah. Just, I mean, I just the moments where people just realize like, hey, we can kind of do whatever we want
Yeah.
and just like let things happen is like always the best stuff.
Yeah. Well, and I think if there's one thing, and this is a good segue into the new album, if there's one thing that I think I found unites progressive rock and punk rock at their purest forms, it's this idea of like, there are no rules. Fuck you. I'm going to do what I want to do because I want to do it. If I want to write a 17-minute song about a fucking D&D campaign, I'm going to do it. God damn it. And if I want to write a 2-minute, blast beat heavy kind of thing, talking about Bush or Reagan or whatever the fuck, I'm going to do it. And both of those can kind of harmoniously coexist, I think, and they represent two sides of the same ideological coin.
Hmm.
So I found a lot of that harmonizing in myself as a listener, as a writer, as a composer, whatever. Um, and a lot of that is what led to A Shout into the Void.
Yeah, and for people listening, Shout in the Void is the latest release, came out in May of 2025. At the time of this recording, it's been out, well, since May. I
Yeah,
can't do math
it's
on that.
7 months. Yeah,
Yeah,
7 months.
sounds about right.
Yeah.
Like, which, it's, I'd say this one, song wise, probably the first official LP. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
I mean, we consider everything an album because, and that's mainly just because I think in terms of vinyl records, because I've been a vinyl head for a long time.
Hmm.
So, if it fills out two sides of a record, it's an album.
Fair.
So to me, The View from Olympus, yeah, it's only 4 songs, but it's at the same length as like Close to the Edge by Yes, which is an album.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't call it our first album. I would call it though the first album for kind of a new, fresher. I feel like it's a kind of a rebirth for us.
Mm.
Not to diminish in any way what we did with the two Hymns albums. I feel like those though were us finding ourselves, and we went through those to get to this point,
Yeah.
which I think we're writing some of the most exciting music that we've made at this point.
And I think that's you saying that is something that a lot of bands should think of too. Is like, yes, I know that there's bands that'll want to bury a lot of their original and early stuff. Uh,
I'm gonna
just
be honest, I've thought about it with the View from Olympus a few times, but it's who you were.
exactly, it's who you were. It's what it was the foundation of what you guys are now. So like, I get there's some things that are super shitty, and I have friends that their basement recording first EP. That one I kind of get because that one was Thomas and Brian. That was pretty bad. I understand, but like at the same
Yep.
time, I'm still like appreciate that stuff as a listener because it's like, okay, like this is where they came from, this is where they're at now, and you guys started from the View of Olympus, and now you guys are shouting to the void. Like you guys have come so far.
Yeah. Well, and it's wild because we got a message from some guy the other day through Facebook, which we hardly use our Facebook at this point because I think most people don't use their Facebook very much anymore because Facebook fucking sucks.
Yep.
But we got this message and it was like, look what I snagged for $50 off Discogs. And it was like one of the CD copies of The View from Olympus because we haven't bothered printing any copies of that in like probably 5 years. And it's like, where were you when we were actually selling it? Like when we were trying to sell albums,
Right.
trying to sell that record. And so, I mean, it's the fact that there are people that still have a taste for that album. I guess it's like it's one of those interesting phenomena as an artist where you can never see your work the way that a listener sees it.
Hmm.
I mean, you can kind of guess, you can kind of direct and prod and poke and say, hey, here's what I intended. But at the end of the day, I mean, they're going to hear something completely different. And a lot of the times they'll hear things that are redeeming quality where you just cringe.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's true because like one of my favorite bands of all time is Crucial Dudes, and I remember like one of their first EPs, which was barely like an EP, was a demo we used to listen to religiously, and it was never put out anywhere. And I got to sit down and talk to one of the guys. I was like, "Where is this?" And he's like, "Oh, that was never supposed to see the light of the world." And I'm like, "Some of the best shit is on that." And he's
Yeah.
like, "I don't even have digital copies of that anymore. It's crazy."
So I'm sure everybody's familiar with them at this point, the Callous Cowboys.
Yep.
So Carson and I, and Maddie too, we all go back to kind of a little scene that emerged around this venue called His Rock in Cumming, Georgia, which is like,
Holy shit, I've been there.
yeah, yeah. Oh, you been to His Rock? Hell yeah.
Yeah, this is
So
wild.
so we all came out of that kind of Atlanta but not Atlanta scene. And my old band played His Rock a few times, and I got to watch Cowboys take shape from the ashes of a band called Sunnyside. Um, and Carson, I don't think the Sunnyside stuff is publicly available anywhere at this point, and I don't know if Carson's ever going to actually release that. But I still have copies of those EPs because they were banging. They were fucking
Yeah.
great. And I remember, and I don't know if this creeped them out or what, but I remember there was an open mic thing at his rock one time, and I came and I covered Hatfields, McCoys, and Other Hatfields from the first Sunnyside EP because it was just such a great riff, and the song and the melody was great. So it's another example of that, I guess, is I love the Sunnyside material that has kind of been left to the dustbin in the wake of Dowboys becoming what they became, which they've become massive.
Right.
Um, I Dan is someone I actually talk to a good bit now. From time to time, I texted them the other day. I was like, "Hey, how's the Coheed cruise?" Not jealous at all. And naturally, I'm psyched for them, and I love seeing how they've exploded. But yeah, I guess I'm kind of digressing here, but felt like an interesting anecdote to bring
No, no,
up.
I think that's solid because like one person that I've also mentioned is from a scene that I grew up in was is Tyler Sodshow from Stars Hollow. Like he's now in obviously Stars Hollow is this mega thing, but I've been around long enough to see all the bands that have come before that. And when he did like kind of like a post hardcore band and did his pop punk band went out on the road with my friend's pop punk band. Like so, I still have most of those
Yeah.
CDs, and like they all still rip. And I think some of it's still out there, but most of it like that band will never play together. They'll never acknowledge anything. But like that shit still to this day is some of the sickest stuff to come out of Iowa.
That makes me think there was this band that was a mutual kind of influence of a bunch of us in that little his rock scene. They were called Dot 22. They were this pop punk band. It was a trio. It was Alex Crane, Singlerman, I think is how you pronounce their last name. I can't remember. Can't remember the drummer's name, but they were an incredible pop punk band. And I still have their CD, Bottle Rocket Romance, and I throw that in the van or like on my CD player at home from time to time. And it's just like this holds up incredibly well.
Yeah,
This is
it, it
every bit as good as like fucking All American Rejects or whatever.
it's crazy how like some people can put out something that stands the testament of time when they don't even realize what they have at that moment.
Yeah.
It's insane. I'm still kind of blown away that obviously you're from that area, so it makes sense. But like the years that since I've been to his rock that I've talked about his rock, and no one has ever
Yep.
known what I've talked about. To finally have someone on the show that knows what I'm talking about is wild to me right now.
Yeah. No, I loved that place, and I loved Bob too. God rest his soul. He was a good dude, and that was such a great venue in all its incarnations. I mean, I was mainly there during the warehouse era. I don't know if that was,
I think that's the
yeah,
one that we played at was the
like
warehouse.
Enterprise Drive.
I don't remember the road, but it was definitely like we thought we were just pulling up to like a long row of like just warehouses, and it was like at the
Yep.
very
Yeah.
end or something like that. Yeah,
Yeah. It was like right there, I think by a chicken plant or something. Like
yeah.
right there,
Possibly.
right there in downtown Cumming. I made a lot of core memories at that place, man.
Yeah, no, I think I still find the pictures. We took like a really good like group photo like on that stage in front of like the big His Rock sign.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, you
yeah,
had to. That was a rite of passage.
yeah. We also didn't realize that there was like any us just being we were all like at least 19 to 20 when we came through. Didn't realize that there was
Hmm.
like any religious connection to his rock.
Yeah.
So like we were doing a cover of Fat Lip by Sum 41 at the time. So
Hmm.
we quickly had to tell our singer like, "Hey, cut out the abortion line, just in case like anything were to get weird."
I'll say this to Bob's credit. He was always a snarky might not be the right word, cranky, cantankerous old motherfucker. But he would let you say and do whatever. Like I can distinctly remember there was a band called Cosmoscope, I think. They did a reunion show because they were a thing for a while and then died out. And then they came back and they did a reunion show. And I remember the lead singer like dropped like 15 F-bombs. And you weren't technically supposed to do that, but Bob didn't care. And he had Bob himself, I remember being a little bit more of a kind of conservative dude, but I remember he had this band's EP that was like the cover was like a pig in a police officer's uniform and a noose. And it's like you would never support this in a million years knowing you, but you're willing to like platform kids because you believe it's important they have a place for expression, you know? So I appreciated that about him.
Yeah, that's
He was
sick.
very, yeah, he was a cool guy.
That's awesome. Um, yeah, I'm gonna have to send a few texts tonight after this episode to some buddies that were with me with then. But yeah, jumping back into a shout into the void. I mean, like it's been out for a while. Obviously, almost like we said, 7 months. It's also been great to listen to. You do kind of sense that little bit of maturity kind of coming. Not that maturity is a bad thing or anything like that.
Mhm.
Obviously, from hymns for the hungry spirit. Overall, like it's been great to listen to. One of my things that I really loved going through it, and I don't know why, what it was specifically about this section, but there's a section in the parting of the ways that goes into like this like synth solo, which is amazing. But then like one style of synth that's get used that is getting used, it to me this might sound super dumb to some people, but it's like those you see like the music rooms that have like the tubes that like kind of make all the noises.
Yeah.
So like the synth that you guys are doing in that section sounds like those just reverberating in like the perfect way, and it just tickled something inside my brain that I just
Yeah.
really loved that whole section.
So, that section where it's still kind of fast, got that kind of double time beat. To me that sounds like fucking video game music, which, all three of us are autistic. All three of us grew up on Sonic, so it's like I that was going to happen.
Hmm.
There's no avoiding it. Um, and then the bit I think you're talking about where it kind of gets into a Latin beat. And there's that that whole thing.
Yeah,
That might be what you're talking about, but I know that Dylan ripped a lot of that, shamelessly off of Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Carnival 9 from Brain Salad Surgery, which is, I think, a 1972 record that they did. Dylan's a big ELP fan, obviously keyboard band, very keyboard driven band there. And a lot of innovative synth stuff was done by Keith Emerson in that band. So Dylan goes back to a lot of that stuff pretty frequently when he writes some of his solos. And he loves to experiment with kind of creating those textures on the Moog. I think one of my other favorite moments is probably when he brought in some Steely Dan shit into Stars Apart on Hymns for Hungry Spirits Volume One. Yeah, we're going back to hymns. Just because my ADHD brain is taking me there. But I wrote that midsection, and that song is kind of like a porcupine tree thing, with the guitar riff. It's one of the few times that I switched to guitar. And he came in and was like, we're going to pretend it's a Steely Dan song. So all that to say, a lot of those textures that you're talking about, they tickle my brain too. And it's one of the reasons I enjoy working with Dylan as much as I do, is that he always finds these weird fucking sounds to play with and to add to these songs that just takes them to this place that I don't think I could take them on my own, you know?
yeah. Because I looking at some of the pictures, like how many synths or pianos does he have with him during a normal performance?
Usually two. He's got lately it's been a Nord stage. I can't remember exactly what model, but it's a Nord. And then he's got his Moog. And he runs both of those through a pedal board that, he can engage at will. I know that he uses a lot of like the Strymon effects. He's partial to those. And then he runs all that out into a kind of a premix so that for ease of for the sound guy's ease is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
So it's like one stereo output, one mono output. That way you can just kind of plug and go. But it's either that Nord or sometimes it's a Chord Kronos, and he'll just use that keyboard as kind of the main board and then the Moog for the solos.
gotcha. And then when it comes to obviously live play, I know you kind of bounce between primarily bass, but sometimes guitar. But like when we get to like a shout into the void, where it's like this giant, like almost ballad moments at times with the backing vocals and stuff like that. Like how was it getting to play this during like the album release show? Did you have were you able to kind of bring in people to kind of make like a little bit bigger of a production?
So we thought about doing that, and the release show was at a place where that just wouldn't have been realistic. It was kind of a smaller bar type joint. And it was like if we were in some kind of theater or a church hall or whatever, it would make sense to like get a choir up there or some pretentious shit like that. But like, for a little bar show, it didn't make any sense to try to pile people on stage, especially last minute like that. But one thing that we do pretty well live is the harmony vocals. Both Jeff and Dylan are strong vocalists in their own right. And, the three-part harmony, even though it isn't quite as expansive as it is on the record, it sounds impressive live. So in those moments where we really need that harmony, both of them can sing and it comes out pretty well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is definitely. I think it would be. I think you guys would be fun and chaotic in like the best way to watch live.
That's a good
Obviously,
way. Yeah.
obviously, you're the one that has like the most movement amongst the three of you. But I think there'd be a little bit of like like unified chaos, performed chaos.
Yeah.
Like that would make it like just pretty great to see all in its live capacity.
Well, we pride ourselves on being a good live band. And, I mentioned kind of getting into punk late in life. One of the good things about that is that, in the prog world, it's all about, oh, you need to play everything perfectly. In the punk world, it's, fuck that. We're going to give you a good show and we're going to get into it and lose ourselves in the music, and bring the energy. And so that was revelatory to me, kind of learning how to move on stage and perform without really caring if it's perfect. So, we are a pretty fun live band, I think, because I'll jump and I'll, throw the bass around and all kinds of crazy shit like that. Um, yeah, it is chaotic. It's controlled chaos, but it is chaos.
Yeah. Which I mean, I feel like not a lot of bands are doing chaos in general. So like, it's always nice to see some chaos in some sort of form. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm at that age where I know people hate this most of the time, but I'm going to stand in my spot in the crowd with my beer in my hand, and I'm not going to jump because my knees can't do it anymore.
Yep.
I'm gonna sway, but to watch a band move around and jump around, like, that's some good shit. Because
Yeah.
I can't do that.
Yeah. When we do perform, I have like extra insoles I put in my shoes specifically so that I can jump. You know, it's the old joke. You're putting in your insoles, you're putting in your mouth guard or whatever. Still punk as fuck.
Yeah. Oh man, I was at a show last weekend, and some friends that had been on the show, on the podcast, I went to go see them, and man, they were jumping and moving, and I was standing right in the front, just like, you guys do your thing, man. I want to be right here. Mainly because like the last time, well, I guess last time, Saturdays at Your Place played in Minneapolis. They had this one spot in their song in their set where like they kind of told everyone like kind of like crouch down to kind of like for the build up and like get up, and I wasn't gonna do it, but like everyone did it around me, so I had to do it. And then on the jump up, like I heard my knee pop, and I was like, nope, can't do
Yep.
this no more. Can't do it.
I will say one thing that helps me a lot because I'm a larger guy and I'm not super coordinated. Getting a wireless system helps me feel better moving around a lot. I tend to trip over shit a lot and say the word a lot, apparently. But that's always been kind of my bad thing. I can remember a few jumps on stage where I would unplug myself or like trip over the cable and it's like I'm about to eat the fucking mic.
Oh god.
I think I did perform with like a bloody gum one time because I like slammed my tooth into the microphone. But that it's rock and roll. You keep
Yeah.
moving.
Yeah, there's something more punk than blood. So
Yeah.
obviously, into the a shout into the void has been out since May. We've had, 7 months since then, and we're going into 2026. At the time of this recording, we're not fully there yet, but like, what's on the horizon for Great White Nothing right now?
So we have started, writing more. There's two songs that Dylan and I got together recently and started working on that I'm really excited about, and I hope we can pull together, at some point early in the new year. We've got a lot of shows that we're trying to play. We've got a double header, Knoxville and Asheville. We're actually doing 3 full hours of music.
Oh,
Yeah, which was probably not smart because, our shit is not super easy to play and we're doing only a few covers. It's mostly originals, but fuck it. Um, but we're doing a couple of those. It's going to be Preservation Pub in Knoxville and then the One Stop at the Asheville Music Hall. We're playing those in January. Then we've got some stuff in Athens and hopefully something in Atlanta in February. In March, we'll be playing a couple shows up here where I live in Gainesville. Um, we've applied to a few festivals, so hopefully, that'll pan out in one of them at least. But we've yet to hear back. But stay tuned for that. Hopefully, at some point next year, we'll do another tour. Even if it's just a short little regional thing, um, and record another album. You know, we are going to try and do a little bit more of a singles approach, I think, leading up to the album, because none of us are really very singles oriented in our approach to making music. But I think it might be a good change of pace for us to just take it song by song. So, we'll probably end up doing that.
yeah, yeah. I know that's obviously. I think we're both from the same generation where we're used to not doing the singles route. I'm used to hearing like a couple singles, and then like give me a full EP or full LP.
Yeah.
The bands nowadays that are doing just dropping like a couple singles every few months, and like that's great. I get it. Do it for the algorithms. I hate it because
Yeah.
I listen to the first song and I'm hyped on it, and I want to listen to the rest of
Yeah.
that story, so to speak. And then
Yeah.
the next CP, the next single is completely different. And it's like, all right, well, lost me.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for a cohesive body of work. Even if it's something short, like just a little, 3 to 5 song EP, um, you can't capture kind of the same immersion. And I think that's kind of one of the things about the modern music industry that does suck is there's a lot of engagement, but not a lot of immersion. You know, it's miles wide and inches deep, and we try to avoid that. But so I think that our approach to the singles stuff, I'm definitely not trying to go that route necessarily, where it's, chasing engagement. I think it's more of like I kind of want to let the songs breathe and become whatever they become as we work toward the album. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's something very lost when you stop creating that cohesive body, when you stop having the end goal, so to speak.
Yeah, because I mean, this wouldn't be your friends' first time releasing just like a one-off single or a single leading up to something. Because you guys released Rule of Engagement leading up to Shout into the Void, but then
Right.
also you guys did like a one-off single, Color, back in
Yeah.
2019 before Hymns Volume One. I think the nice thing, if a band can kind of do it, obviously it's doing it is all subjective when I say this, but like when you do release that like one off single of just like, hey, this is something that we just need to get out of our system. Like
Yeah.
this isn't like gonna go on the full EP, would never make it to the LP, or like it's not part of the full story, but like there's something here that we just need to work out and just like get out
Yeah.
there and
Yeah.
let it breathe on its own.
Yeah. I would definitely agree with that. And it's the way I like to think about singles is like, I go back to stuff like Good Vibrations by the Beach Boys. That is a song that stands on its own. And if it
Hmm.
can stand on its own, I think releasing it as a single totally makes sense.
Yeah,
I think any other way of doing singles, just to chase the algorithm, just to, keep the maintained presence or whatever, any of that tends to just kind of feel bland and disappointing to me.
yeah.
But if the song stands on its own, I think that's the main thing.
100%. And I will add to this. if you're for people that are planning to release singles leading up to an album, don't front load your album with all the singles you just released.
Oh God, no, absolutely not.
That's the worst because by the time you listen, you've dropped three, maybe four singles leading up to an album release. And if they're the first, within the first five songs on the EP or album or whatever, you've already lost most people because they're not going to want to listen to past song five because they've already heard all
Yeah.
the hits basically, which is such a bummer sometimes.
Well,
I had someone do that
and
recently, and I was like, man,
yeah, I think generally speaking too, don't necessarily pick your strongest
mm,
as the singles, you know? I think one thing that I do think we did well with the rollout of this album, despite the fact that, we have no budget, we have no PR guy. Um, it's, just throwing things out there. I do think we did the smart thing by saving a few of our best songs for the album release, because songs like Parting of Ways, we talked about that being a single, even though it's a little bit longer. That song is incredibly strong and it's become one of our favorites to play live, one of the ones that people get into the most. But that's one that we saved because it was, you don't want to blow your load on the front end.
yep,
So yeah, I think there's an art to picking and choosing what songs you drop ahead of the release of a larger body.
yeah.
And that art has been lost by some people, I think.
Yeah, it's been a loss. It's nice. I feel like on the past few most recent releases that I've kind of checked out, they've kind of found it again. So like I know when I sat down with them, I was like, you guys didn't prepare me for like the last like four songs on this album because like they're some of the best. Like the singles are great, but like then the last song that they left off from the album, I was like, this is like the best song, and they're like, we thought about being a single. I was like, I'm happy you didn't do it
Yeah.
because I got to find it on its own the way you were supposed to find it, and
Yeah.
it like made it so much more special. I felt like,
Well, yeah, it's you want to be surprised. That's what makes an album magic. It's what makes it connect with you is when you have that genuine feeling of like, what the fuck is this? I think back to the records that have captivated me the most. I think about like Daft Punk's Random Access Memories, closing with a song like Contact after doing something like Get Lucky. The way that is just completely worlds apart blew me away. And to this day, that record is one of the most like key cornerstone musical works for me because everything is so varied, and I was constantly surprised. It's yeah. I'm talking too much about it, I'm sure, but like that, what you're saying, that getting surprised, that getting taken aback, not feeling prepared for it, that's what creates such a genuine connection with the art.
yeah, if someone's going to go listen to a Shout into the Void right now that hasn't listened to it yet, not to give them too many spoilers, but what is something that they can possibly be surprised about in this album?
Well, the instrumental 1000 Eyes, that one, we put a lot of work into that, and it's become our closer live just because it's such an interesting and complex piece. And it's kind of got almost adventure, in it. The bass line is very Iron Maiden, and I've been tossing it around for years, but it's very cinematic, very adventurous. So there's that. There's a song toward the end called You're Not In, which is totally, inspired by George Carlin. And there's almost a new wave kind of vibe to it, like Oingo Boingo kind of shit. There's that and like an 80s Rush influence there. I will say there's a lot of disparate influences that all kind of came together in the making of some of these songs. And I think we did not front load the record. You know, I think there's a lot of surprises for people to find.
Yeah, and I would also agree. You guys did not front load this. 1,000 Eyes will take you for kind of feels it is a great surprise. It feels out of left field when you're listening to it, just because it's that full instrumental. But it's a nice coming out of left field. It's like you just got the ball out of left field. You made that strike at third. You're sitting good, like type of deal.
Yeah.
Like, it's all good. Overall, like it was fun to listen to. It's not my normal. I listen to a lot of. I feel like just emo and Midwest emo because
Mhm.
I'm a sad boy at heart. But it was nice to kind of pepper this in and have a change of pace for once, compared to like everything else I've been listening to lately. And it's just some good stuff, man. You guys are killing it.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes I listen to something new and I'm like, man, why do I listen to the same shit all the fucking time? And I'm gonna get in the truck to go to work tomorrow. It's just gonna put on the same record I've probably listened to way too many times. But that's just how I am, because it's human nature. I don't know, it's
Yeah.
weird. But it's been a great time. I'm really stoked that you reached out. Like I said, hopefully we'll get to do another one of these when the next album drops or we do something else.
Mhm.
Like you're always
Yeah, for
welcome to come
sure.
back on. I always like to end off these episodes on like kind of like a high note. Not to say that we're not already vibing and having good times already. But my final question to you is: from your time in Great Wide Nothing, obviously we're almost spanning a decade at this point. What has been some of your favorite moments that you've gotten to experience so far?
I think the top for me was the tour that we did earlier this year because I've wanted to do something that actually, spanned up the East Coast for a long time. And I'm a dad and I'm, very much working class. So I don't get the chance to be away very much. So being able to carve out that time and head up the East Coast with the band, that was a lot of fun. It was a big adventure. And I think that consistently traveling with my friends, getting to do those kind of things as a unit, kind of almost like a little family, I think that's the best part. Um, that and then just playing with some really incredible bands and getting to form some friendships. Um, Shout out to Sister Sleep, Caregiver, probably way too many others to mention. Um, But yeah, I mean, just the relationships that I've formed with other musicians and the connections that we've made, I think that's the biggest treasure. That to get super cheesy and cliche with it, the real treasure here is friendship.
I mean, as cheesy as it sounds, I express that on a lot of episodes. Like the
Yeah.
thing that I miss about running with my friends in their band is not like I never played. I just TM'd and merched. I don't miss
Mhm.
doing that stuff. I miss the being in the van just with your best friends
Yeah.
for 6 to 8 hours. Yeah, the show's gonna happen. They play a 20-minute set and then they're done. You're still with each other for the rest of the night and the rest of that week or whatever. Like that's the stuff I miss now, especially with all of us living kind of different grown up lives across the country. If I could go back in time and just get one more night, just a day just to drive around doing nothing, like
Yeah.
I'd give a probably my right leg for it.
Hmm.
Like those are great times.
Definitely.
But was this also like I know you said it was like kind of obviously with timing and everything. Was this the first like kind of run that Great White Nothing has actually done?
Yeah, we've done some, smaller regional things. We've gone down to Tampa for a festival a couple times. We've played plenty in Tennessee and in the Carolinas and so forth. But this past summer, in support of the new album, was the first time we've actually gotten like up to New York,
Hmm.
which that was such an experience. Not all of it great because we ended up in a shithole hotel in Jersey, but the show was fun
Yeah.
and spending time with my band and getting to also meet some friends that I've met through social media connections in the DIY scene. Um, Getting to kind of meet those folks in person when we did play that show, that was a lot of fun. So again, I think that honestly, the thing I value most about being in this band at this point is the time I get to spend doing what I love with people that I enjoy being with.
No, it's all great moments. Like
Yeah.
despite the shitty hotels, we've all been there, but
Yep.
the time that you get to experience and like make those connections with people, and also get to see people like from like the DIY scene. I know that there's so many people that I've met on the DIY scene and DIY Twitter that I haven't gotten a chance to meet in person yet, and
Hmm.
there's a long list of people at this point. But it's great that you got to actually make those physical connections.
Yeah. Um, I think more than any kind of financial gain, it really comes down to that. It's relationships. It's the people, you know? It's the thing that keeps me going in this.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% like. I don't make any money off this. I'm not in this obviously to make money. I've always been in it to make the about the connections and like getting to
Yeah.
meet people and just have a good time. Because at the end of the day, it's all about the music and just the community in general. And it's
Yeah.
great that you've gotten to meet those connections. I know there's a lot of people that I've met through my time of music that
Hmm.
I haven't gotten to see in a long time, and it's always great to still have those connections. Like you still bump into them. Like I
Yeah.
bumped into someone recently, and when they were playing a show here in town, and we literally bullshitted for like 2 hours. It felt like we had it felt like we like just picked up right where we left off, which is amazing.
Yeah. I think I would add the other thing about I think the big takeaway for me from my time in Great Wide has been it's been a big long process of finding myself in conjunction with finding the sound of the band, you know. So much of what we are as an artistic entity is something that has grown as I've grown as a person, you know. The band was there when my kids were born, and it's here now that they're 7, and I've got a 2-year old as well. And as I've matured and become a different person and sharpened, I feel, in certain aspects of my life. And yeah, it's been something that's been a constant. And so the way that it's the life of that creative aspect of myself has kind of grown in conjunction with me as a person. I think that's the biggest rewarding factor, you know, to being in this as long as I have been, is that I can look back and feel kind of a sense of accomplishment, even though we haven't really objectively accomplished a whole lot, you know. It's like still here, you know.
I mean, still, yeah, still being here. That's the biggest accomplishment for a lot of people. Like we talked about earlier, you made it through the pandemic, came out the other side, still doing the band and still doing what you want to do. I think bucket list things are like when people think of like doing bands and like everything that they want to do. I think it's different for everyone, obviously, depending on what you have going on. And I think you're still. Where am I going with this? Still had a good point. There's a lot of things that could still come. You obviously did the first run. Hopefully, many more that are able to be done will come,
Yeah,
and keep going from there.
for sure.
Oh, yeah. If anyone's looking for Great White Nothing merch, music, or Great White Nothing in general, where can they find it?
So we do have a website. I built it. I learned HTML and built it kind of the old-fashioned way. It's greatwidenothing.neocities.org. Um, and it's very basic, you know, no frills, but I kind of like it that way because it's got kind of the 90s DIY sort of feel to it.
Hmm.
But all of our stuff is on there, including like an archive with flyers and photos from every show we've ever played.
Oh,
Um, but there's that. We're on Bandcamp. We're on Apple Music. You know, any of the other streaming services, including Spotify, which I fucking hate, but you know, apparently you have to be on it. Um, but yeah, I mean, we're wherever you look for us, you should be able to find us. I will say that I nuked our Twitter again recently. It was not doing much for my mental health. Um, but we are on everything else and typically respond pretty quick.
yeah. So I mean, depending on where you found this episode, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, I feel like there's one that I'm missing, or YouTube, and you got to see Daniel's lovely face like I did tonight. Make sure you check the hyperlinks down below. Follow Great White Nothing on all the platforms. Be ready for new music, new merch, new tour dates, show dates in general, and everything else that they might have up their sleeves. Um, Daniel, this has been a great time. I'm happy we got to do this. I'm happy you reached out.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Would love to do it again.
yeah, I look forward to doing the next one. Um, Everyone, please go listen to A Shout Into the Void and go follow Great White Nothing on all the platforms, and I'll catch everyone on the next episode.
Thanks, Michael.
See ya.
Beers with Bears. Beers with Bears.